When I arrived, the story was nearing its end. The realm was unified, and the new emperor had ascended the throne. The woman who had shared both hardship and joy with him, never leaving his side, was given a cup of poisoned wine. And I, the empress he was about to marry, the eldest daughter of the Wang clan, a woman of noble birth. I watched the woman drink the poisoned wine. Do you know why I'm here? She gave a cold laugh, her forehead covered in cold sweat. Are you afraid I won't die? No. I took a pill from my sleeve and stuffed it into her mouth. I'm afraid you will die. Welcome to my channel. If you like this story, please subscribe for more exciting stories. Chapter 1. A woman of the Wang family does not become a concubine, but only an empress. Therefore, Shuangwen could only bestow a cup of poisonous wine upon her. On the night of the wine giving, I asked my father to let me go. He asked me, why? I want to see what kind of woman she is. My father looked at me, thinking it was just a daughter's jealousy, and agreed. So I saw Shuangwen's beloved. She was very beautiful. Shuangwen had been at war for years, yet she had accompanied him all along, and her beauty had not faded at all. It was clear how much Shuangwen cherished her. Alas, it was all but a fleeting illusion. Dressed as an eunuch, I stood behind her as she raised the cup and asked, "Does the emperor have any words for me?" The eunuch replied, "The emperor says that in the next life, he wishes to be husband and wife with the empress." Bao Xiyun heard this, smiled sadly, then nodded. "Very well. I agree. What a devoted woman." The wine entered her stomach, and within moments, she was writhing in agony on the ground. But she did not scream or beg for mercy. The wine was excruciatingly painful. Yet she only bit her lip until it bled, saying not a word. I admired her deeply. I stepped forward, watching her struggle, and ordered the eunuch, "You may all leave now." The eunuch, "We fear we might disturb the young lady." I said, "Leave." The eunuch dared not say another word. Though he served in the palace, he was a member of the royal family. He knew what to do tonight. The door closed again, and I knelt down. Bao Xiyun was drenched in sweat, but her eyes never left me. She must have guessed my identity, but she still didn't speak. I said, "Is there nothing you want to ask me?" Bao Xiyun let out a muffled groan and said in a broken voice, "Why did you come?" I said, "I wanted to see you." Humph. Bao Xiyun sneered coldly, her face as white as paper from the poison. "Are you afraid I won't die?" "No." I said, "I'm afraid you'll die." Bao Xiyun's eyes flickered, as if she hadn't understood my words. I took a pill from my sleeve and stuffed it into her mouth, telling her that it was the royal family who wanted to kill her, not me. Bao Xiyun's breathing gradually stabilized, but her body was still weak, and she couldn't get up. Clinging to the bed head, she asked, "Why? Why did you save me?" "Who should it be? Shuangwen?" I countered. Bao Xiyun was speechless for a moment before saying, "He has his reasons. I don't blame him. True love is stronger than gold. But I don't know what that feels like." I stood up and sat beside her, saying, "Shuangwen truly loved you and wanted to save you. But he couldn't protect you. If you die, he will mourn you for the rest of his life." Bao Xiyun remained silent. "That's why my father insisted on your death." I gently pushed aside my sleeve, my tone calm. "If you die, I will enter the palace, and Shuangwen will never love me. I can then become the Wang family's eternal empress, not Shuangwen's wife, using Bao Xiyun's life to stand between me and Shuangwen. Then I will forever need to rely on my family. My father won't let me escape his control, and he certainly won't let me be a loyal wife to the emperor." Bao Xiyun stared at me with wide eyes, as if I were speaking nonsense. "You don't believe me, do you?" I smiled faintly. But that's why I saved you. You did it for Shuangwen? How could you think that? I feigned surprise. I've never even seen Shuangwen. How could I do it for him? But you. I did it for myself. I cut her off, leaning in close with a charming smile. Bao Siyun. Remember this, I saved your life. And I owe you my life. From now on, you are mine. Bao Siyun stared blankly. She didn't understand. She didn't know the hell I had lived in. Nor did she know the thunderstorm raging in my heart. But it didn't matter. I had no intention of explaining. She was just a pawn. A bargaining chip I could use against Shuangwen in the future. On our wedding night, Shuangwen didn't lift my veil. He entered the inner chamber, dismissed everyone, and then sat alone at the table. He didn't seem interested in drinking the wedding wine with me. I lifted the veil myself. In the flickering red candles, I saw his face for the first time. He was indeed as handsome and tall as I had imagined, with an elegant demeanor that set him apart from ordinary men. I had heard that he came from a distinguished family, though it had fallen into decline. Noticing my movement, he turned to look at me, his eyes as dark as ink, calm and still. I was satisfied. The women of the Wang clan were renowned throughout the kingdom for their unparalleled beauty, and I was the most outstanding among them. But Shuangwen seemed uninterested in me. After all, Bao Siyun was already a beauty. The empress should rest first. Shuangwen stood up. I have official business to attend to. I rose and bowed, Your Majesty. Please take your time. I did not hold him back nor complain. He paused for a moment, glanced at me thoughtfully, then departed. I fell asleep peacefully. The next day, I accompanied him to the ancestral temple to receive the witness of heaven, earth, and our ancestors. The temple was built on a high platform, and from where I stood, I could only see a sea of people below. Standing high above, looking down on the ants below. This was the feeling of being second only to the emperor. This was the family honor my father had always longed for. The moment of glory for the Wang clan. The great clans, hidden behind the emperor, could turn the heavens into clouds and rain with a flick of their hands. More like the true masters of the world than the emperor himself. How impressive. Unfortunately, my father did not know that from the moment I stood here, my position had been reversed with that of the Wang family. I had become the one holding the chess pieces, and the first thing I would do was overturn the Wang family's chessboard. I wonder what expression he will have then. Will he be like my mother, wailing pitifully, or like I once was, kneeling and begging for mercy? I smile slightly, gazing into the distance, until Shuangwen comes to take my hand. His hand is warm, and he looks straight ahead, not at me. Don't lose focus, he says. I smiled. Your Majesty, your servant is fully awake. He glanced at me, his expression disapproving. He must think I'm not obedient enough. I've heard that Bao Siyun has a gentle temperament, is kind and courteous, like a wildflower. Shuangwen likes such women. But I think maybe he only likes the kind of Bao Siyun that exists in his imagination. I had heard many rumors about the two of them, such as never abandoning each other in dire straits, using their bodies to keep each other warm in the cold winter. They met when they were young and poor, made vows early on, endured hardships, walked on the edge of a knife and the tip of a sword, and finally reached the prosperous era. But in the end, he couldn't protect her. If I were Shuangwen, I would be in immense pain. Life in the palace is actually quite boring. There are only a few low-ranking concubines in the harem, and due to my status, no one dares to challenge me. Shuangwen rarely visits the harem either. Since our wedding, I've only seen him twice. If life were to continue like this, it would be easy and pleasant. Alas, Good times never last. 3 months after I entered the palace, my father came to see me and asked if I knew how the emperor planned to implement his new policies. He wanted me to test the emperor's intentions. Shuangwen had great ambitions and sought to cut away the rotten flesh of the empire, which would inevitably clash with the interests of the Wang clan. I said, "The emperor does not trust me." "Then make him trust you," my father said. "You have such beauty, do you really intend to waste it? Or do you think I sent you to the palace just to be an idle noblewoman? You must understand your place. Without me, without the Wang family, the wealth and honor you enjoy now will vanish in an instant. Serve the emperor well, give birth to a prince soon, and preserve the glory of the Wang family. That is the future for you and your children." I remained silent, staring at him. He did not know that I would never bear a prince in this lifetime. But I still complied with a gentle smile. "Your daughter understands." "Good." My father nodded in satisfaction, gave me some final instructions, then left the palace. I watched him depart. That night, Shuangwen came to my palace. He must have heard that my father had visited today and wanted to probe the situation. He said he was busy with state affairs and had neglected me, asking me not to take it to heart. I shook my head and said that the emperor was concerned about the realm, and as his concubine, I naturally understood. He then mentioned that the plum blossoms in the rear garden of the palace were in bloom, and if the empress had time, she could take the concubines to brew wine and admire the flowers. I said, "Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. I will do so." He chatted with me about many trivial matters, and I responded to each one. Finally, he mentioned the new policies. I did not respond. He glanced at me, stood up, walked to the side, and brushed his hand over the words I had left on the desk, saying, "The Empress's handwriting is bold and powerful, which does not match her appearance." I said, "Your Majesty's words make me feel ashamed." Shuangwen smiled faintly. He could see through my insincerity and knew that my shame was just a joke. The new policies will soon be implemented in the suburbs of the capital. I intend to select a prince to oversee their implementation. Who do you think would be suitable? I said, "Wang Ji." Shuangwen was surprised. He glanced at me, thinking I had made a mistake. I looked at him without flinching, using my eyes to tell him I was correct. Shuangwen remained silent for a long time before finally nodding. "Very well." As we left, it began to drizzle. An eunuch held an umbrella for him. He stood under the corridor and turned to look at me. I asked, "Does Your Majesty have any further instructions? I have heard that the Wang family values Wang Hao." I merely smiled. Wang Hao is the eldest son of my second uncle, the rising star of the Wang family, and the future head of the clan. But I am no dog. This servant has also heard that the emperor relies heavily on the Wang clan. Shuangwen listened, his dark eyes scrutinizing me for a moment before curving into a smile. He then turned and left. Regarding the new policies, Shuangwen had chosen Wang Ji, a member of the Wang family with minimal presence. I did not know how he would speak in court, but the Wang family had no objections. Perhaps it was because Wang Ji still bore the Wang surname, though he was not as brilliant as his other clan brothers. As long as he bore the Wang surname, he was the same to the Wang family. It seemed that once one was crowned with the Wang surname, one became a vessel in that mansion, losing one's own thoughts and the ability to break free. I am, and so is my elder brother. At the end of the year, Shuangwen wanted to leave the palace for a private inspection. The new policies had been piloted in the suburbs of the capital for a year, and he wanted to see the results. He asked if I would like to accompany him. To be honest, I was a bit surprised, seeing me rare in such a daze. Shuangwen couldn't help but smile. "What's wrong, Empress? Do you think I'm deceiving you?" I shook my head and asked after a moment, Why does your majesty want me to accompany you? The new policies benefit the people, and the empress has also contributed to them. Naturally, I want you to see them as well. The new policies are the emperor's and the minister's achievements. I dare not take credit for them. Shuangwen did not argue further. He turned his back to me and walked down the steps, leaving behind a single sentence: the empress should prepare. We depart tomorrow. I stood at the door, watching his departing figure. A year after ascending the throne, Shuangwen had grown noticeably thinner. He had once been tall and imposing, like a general. Now, his exhaustion was plain to see. How bitter must the emperor's heart be? In this cold, isolated palace, on that high throne, he was a lonely ruler. I couldn't be his confidant, but someone else could. On the day of my private visit, we encountered a snowstorm on the way, so I invited Shuangwen to stay at my country estate. He thought for a moment and agreed. I smiled upon hearing this. He truly is a good emperor. At this hour, returning to the city would be too late. Yet he refused to break protocol as an emperor, choosing instead to stay with me in the countryside. The villa was clean and serene, though snow fell heavily, leaving no trace of disorder. Shuangwen, rarely indulging in literary pretensions, remarked, "What a lovely place." I walked ahead of him, smiling to myself. Indeed, it was a lovely place, but for Shuangwen, the surprises were far from over. We came to a side room, and I stopped at the door. "Your Majesty, please go in." "I will not enter." Shuangwen was puzzled. "Empress?" I did not explain, bowed once, and left. The door behind me was pushed open, followed by the sound of things being knocked over. I did not turn back. After such a long separation, if Shuangwen was still as calm as a mountain, that would truly be disappointing. The snow continued to fall. No one came out from the side room. My cousin Wangji walked over to me and stood beside me, looking up at the snow. "You've worked hard this past year," I said. Wangji stood with his hands behind his back and replied, "You've worked hard too, Your Majesty." I turned my head to look at him, and Wangji smiled. "Your Majesty, please rest assured." I smiled as well. I raised my eyes again. The endless snow and wind showed no sign of light. But I was not afraid. After a snowy night comes clear skies. Tomorrow there will surely be a sunrise. I thought Shuangwen would stay the night. But before dawn he opened the door. I waited outside for him. He wrapped himself in a large cloak, said nothing, and lifted his leg to leave. The lingering fragrance inside the room had not yet dissipated. From where I stood, I could see the lotus-pink bed curtains, layered upon each other, tightly wrapping the bed like clouds. I asked, "Your Majesty, aren't you taking her back to the palace?" Shuangwen shook his head. I knew his concerns. The court was unstable, and he couldn't risk it. "Then I will continue to take care of her." Shuangwen asked me, "Is it safe?" "The people at the estate," I said. "Your Majesty, rest assured. This is the Wang family's estate. They say the light is brightest under the lamp. But my father and those uncles and elders all think highly of themselves. They would never suspect anyone would dare to scheme against them." Shuangwen asked in surprise, "Why do the people at the estate listen to you?" "Money moves hearts." Shuangwen remained silent after hearing this. "Actually, the situation has changed somewhat now. As Empress, I not only have wealth but also power. Those who rely on me are hoping for a chance to rise to the top overnight. I have never resented such thoughts." This wasn't the first time I had shown goodwill toward Shuangwen. Finally, he asked me, "What do you want?" His eyes darkened as he repeated, "Empress, what do you want?" Now that we were being honest with each other, he was waiting for me to make my move. I looked at him, my heart calm. I had waited so long for this moment that even joy seemed to have lost its meaning. I said, "Your Majesty owes me a promise. You must repay me in the future." Shuangwen heard this and fixed his gaze on me, scrutinizing me for a long time before saying, "This is an unwritten book. The Empress's ambitions are too great." I smiled. "Does your Majesty fear that I will demand your throne?" "Rest assured, Your Majesty. I have no interest in wielding power." "Then what are you interested in?" "Such private matters are not suitable for me to share with your Majesty." Shuangwen fell silent. Then he bowed his head in thought. As the sky behind him grew brighter, he finally nodded. "All right. I promise you." "Thank you, Your Majesty." I watched him leave, feeling certain I had not misjudged him. He truly loved her like a cloud and treasured her like a jewel, willing to make such a grand promise for her. People say one loves the throne more than a beauty, but I always believed that a true emperor would be willing to risk everything for the one he loves. Upon returning to the palace, Shuangwen had someone send me an item. I opened it to find a blank imperial edict sealed with the imperial seal. He kept his word, his promise was as good as gold. I placed the edict under my pillow and fell asleep that night, sleeping more soundly than ever before. After that, Shuangwen seemed to have forgotten Bao Siyun and never visited her again. It wasn't until the end of another year that he used the New Year's festivities as an excuse to leave the palace several times. I didn't follow him every time. Only the last time. It was still the same small courtyard. Still the same lantern. But this time, there was no snow. The moonlight was bright, and the clouds drifted gently. That year, many significant events occurred. New policies were implemented nationwide, and talent was selected through examinations. Shuangwen promoted numerous individuals from humble backgrounds. The court was no longer dominated by a single aristocratic family, various factions now competed for power, with victories and defeats on both sides. My father and my uncles felt that the situation was perilous. Although my elder brother held a high position in the court, they remained uneasy. My father had repeatedly sent messages to me, urging me to bear a prince as soon as possible. I find it laughable. Why do they think that a child can control an emperor? No. Perhaps they are not foolish. Shuangwen has always suffered from headaches, though it was not noticeable when he was young. In recent years, due to constant stress and sleepless nights, his headaches have worsened, and he has had to stop writing several times while reviewing official documents. But this is an imperial secret, how could my father and the others know? I was lost in thought. Just then, the door opened, and Shuangwen stepped out. Bao Siyun, wrapped in a robe, was seeing him off. Upon seeing me standing at the door, she seemed a bit embarrassed and softly said, "Empress." I hummed in response. Shuangwen turned back and instructed, "It's windy, don't see me off. Go inside quickly. This servant will not go out. I will stay here to see His Majesty off." Shuangwen smiled. It was a rare smile on his face, simple, sincere, and heartfelt. So even the emperor could smile so purely, like a child. On the way back, I rode in the same carriage as him. As soon as we got in, Shuangwen covered his head with his hands. His knuckles cracked, but he didn't make a sound. Small beads of cold sweat appeared on his forehead, and I took out a handkerchief to wipe them away. After a moment, Shuangwen returned to normal and opened his eyes to look at me. "Your Majesty, please rest assured," I said. He smiled silently. Some things didn't need to be said explicitly, he and I understood each other perfectly. "Don't tell her," Shuangwen said. I nodded. Upon returning to the palace, Shuangwen saw me off first. He sat in the palanquin and did not accompany me down, instead lowering his head to remind me to rest well. The year-end affairs are busy, and the sacrificial ceremonies have been exhausting. The empress must take care of her health. I tilted my head slightly, looking at his slightly weary face, and suddenly asked, "Are all the physicians in the imperial hospital trustworthy?" Shuangwen was taken aback. Now that the great cause has just been established, the emperor must take care of his health even more than I do. The Imperial Medical Institute and the people serving him, if the emperor trusts them, I will take care of it for him. Shuangwen did not ask further and quickly nodded. Then I will leave it to the empress. I bowed. I dare not accept such a responsibility. Thus, by year's end, I had another task to add to my already hectic schedule of palace duties. It wasn't difficult to investigate. Those connected to the Wang family were always guardless around me. I wrote down the names and had them delivered to my father. My father entered the palace the next day to see me. Why? I asked. Spying on the emperor's private affairs, does father think his head is harder than others? My father didn't care, I did it for the empress. Oh. His Majesty is unwell, and the empress must give birth to an heir as soon as possible. Otherwise, without a prince in the palace, the empress may not be able to sit on the throne as Empress Dowager in the future. I laughed in anger. Father, are you saying that if His Majesty has no heir, you and my uncles will start a new family? My father didn't say anything, but the answer was obvious. If Shuangwen has no heir, they'll choose an heir from among the royal relatives. What role would I play then? The Wang family would only side with the new emperor and empress. Who would care about me? A worthless son? My father finished speaking and left arrogantly. He thought he had me by the throat. But he was wrong. Because Bao Xiyun is pregnant. News came from Zhuangzi that Bao Xiyun is already over a month pregnant. I told Shuangwen the news. And he stood there speechless for a moment, showing a rare look of confusion. Is it true? I smiled. Of course it's true. The physician also said it's a boy. His face lit up with joy, and he paced back and forth in the hall, unsure of what to say. After a moment, he finally said, "The Empress. Should the Emperor go see her?" Shuangwen's joy faded upon hearing this. The early spring was busy with affairs. Unlike the end of the year when one could steal a moment of leisure. He shook his head. I should not leave the palace again. Please ask the Empress to take good care of her. As for Xiyun, she will understand me. I looked at him. There was so much helplessness in his eyes. Sometimes I think that an emperor who is too wise is actually very tired. And it's better to be an incompetent emperor who does whatever he wants. Your Majesty, I said, bring her back. I should have a prince. Shuangwen couldn't believe it. I said, Your Majesty doesn't have to do anything. I'll take care of it. Since the Wang family desires a prince so much, I will give them one. I did not go through the palace to arrange for Bao Xiyun's return. I used the excuse of needing to rest and recover my health to have my family select a suitable female physician to attend to me in the palace. For this, I made a special trip back to the Wang family. My return to the mansion to visit my family was an act of favor from the emperor. My uncle and father nodded with a faint smile, indicating their satisfaction with my behavior. I stayed at the Wang family's residence for half a day. After finally emerging from the study, I dismissed the attendants and walked alone in the garden. The Wang family's mansion was vast. As a child, I thought the world was no larger than this place. And even after walking for days, I couldn't exit the gates of the Wang family's estate. The mansion was under strict security today, and the servants dared not move about freely. I dismissed the attendants and eventually made my way to the Wang family's ancestral hall. The Wang family was a renowned clan, and the ancestral tablets in the hall were too numerous to count. Standing there, I felt as though all my ancestors were watching me. They must be able to see through my cruelty. But would they, like my father, be blind to the truth and unaware of why I harbor such hatred? Perhaps they do. These intricately carved beams and pillars did not rise from the ground. How many bones lie buried beneath them? Who can say? In times of chaos, noble families must survive by any means necessary. Schemes and calculations are not beyond them. I have never believed that pursuing wealth and honor is wrong. But I hate them for using the name of their noble lineage and the pretense of ritual and law to devour human lives. These wooden plaques. These black plaques hanging above our heads, are they really more important than human emotions? If so, then what is the meaning of life? What did my father live for? I raised my head, gazing at the highest plaque, my chest burning with anger. Yet not a single tear fell. I have long since cried dry. The ancestral hall is cold and damp. I stand motionless for a long time. The Empress was here after all. It was hard to find her. A voice comes from behind. My elder brother Wangji walks over to my side, stands beside me, and also looks up at the tablets. My mother is not here. I say. Wangji says. My mother is not here either. He pauses, then raises his eyebrows at me. Nor is my father. His parents and eldest sister had defied the Wang family's ancestral teachings and were therefore unworthy of entering the ancestral hall. My older brother said, I'm a little worse off than the Empress. After he finished speaking, we exchanged glances and finally couldn't help but burst into laughter. Many years ago, there was also such a day when I met him in the ancestral hall. But back then, I had been whipped until my body was covered in wounds, soaking wet, looking like a wandering ghost thrown on the ground. He was slightly better off, with no visible injuries. But he was emaciated, huddled in a corner, gnawing on a bone with no meat left on it. I wanted to help my mother escape from the Wang family, and he was an orphan with no parents. We had the same goal, and we both hated the Wang in the ancestral hall. But at that time, we didn't know if we would ever have a chance to overthrow the powerful. Time flies so fast. I sighed. I smiled, feeling a little less gloomy, and said, Please continue to take care of the matter of the medical attendant entering the palace. Your Highness. Please rest assured, said Ji, the elder brother. I will arrange everything for you. Thank you, elder brother. With Ji's help, Bao Siyun quickly entered the palace as a medical attendant, known as Yun Yang. 2 months later, I was diagnosed with a pregnancy. This was Xiaowen's eldest son and the legitimate heir. My father and the others were so confident, with no doubt that this future emperor was of the Wang family's bloodline. Ji brought me a message, saying that the family was making plans for the prince. In the past 2 years, there hadn't been much success, and the Wang family had become much more low-key. Xiaowen wasn't an incompetent ruler. Competing with such emperors in terms of strategy must be exhausting for the Wang family. To maintain the family's prosperity, one must have a steady hand. Since Xiaowen cannot deliver, it is only natural to seek a new ruler. The aristocratic families love to be the puppet masters behind dynastic changes. Let them do as they please, I said. My elder brother remained silent after hearing this, then asked me, What are your true intentions? Your Highness? Do you really intend to adopt this child as your own? I understood his concerns. Regardless of who becomes emperor, I will be the Empress Dowager in the future. I said, Brother, rest assured. Though I have no interest in the throne, that does not mean I am willing to risk my life. My elder brother scoffed. In that case, I shall take my leave. I watched him depart, then sat on the soft couch and turned to look behind me. Bao Siyun was supporting the multi-tiered cabinet, looking utterly bewildered. I asked, Are you afraid? She shook her head and bit her lip. Don't worry. Once the child is born, you can return to Xiaowen's side and become his legitimate concubine. She opened her mouth but only murmured a quiet thank you after a moment. I smiled faintly. The future emperor's birth mother is also a kind-hearted person. If I were her, I would never thank someone like me. But if she and Shuangwen weren't such people, I wouldn't have chosen this path either. 3 years after I entered the palace, I gave birth to a prince. Shuangwen was very happy and personally named the prince. But he couldn't decide between a few options and came to ask our opinions. Bao Xiyan smiled softly. Your Majesty, I don't know which one is better. Perhaps you should ask the Empress. Shuangwen then looked at me. I said Rui is a good name. Shuangwen smiled and nodded. Indeed. I also think this character is good. Thus, the prince was named Xiao Rui. When Xiao Rui was just 100 days old, Shuangwen proclaimed him crown prince, as the legitimate heir from the main consort. His status was unquestionable, and no one objected. Since the medical attendant had rendered meritorious service, I sent her to serve by Shuangwen's side. Shuangwen was still a bit concerned. I said, if your Majesty is uneasy, let her serve as a female official first. Once she has helped you recover from your headache, you can grant her an official title later. Shuangwen pondered for a moment before saying, but there are no female officials in the palace. He paused, then added, there have never been women in official positions. That was in the past. I said, Your Majesty's new policies benefit all the people, and women are naturally included. Granting women official titles and allowing them to serve in the palace is not out of the question. The conservative faction in the court always criticizes the new policies on the grounds of ritual and law. If your Majesty wishes to be an enlightened ruler, you must make decisions unprecedented in history. Shuangwen laughed. Allowing women to hold official positions is really a good strategy? Of course. I nodded. Moreover, we should also liberalize customs. Allow women to remarry. Prevent divorced women from entering nunneries. Exempt widows from the obligation to remain chaste. Prohibit the divorce of childless women. And abolish the practice of drowning women who lose their virginity. If a husband commits moral transgressions, his wife may file a complaint with the authorities for legal judgment. When I finished speaking, the room fell silent. Even Xiao Rui's crying grew faint. Bao Xiyan stared at me with wide eyes. She must have thought I was talking nonsense. But Shuangwen remained expressionless. He merely instructed Bao Xiyan to take the children down first, then asked me to escort him on his way. The night sky was clear and starry. This was the first time we had walked together in the palace. So, this is the Empress's true purpose, he said. I didn't expect to hide anything from him. My thoughts were so shallow, with Shuangwen's cunning. He must have already guessed much of what was happening. I heard that your mother died of illness. I stopped in my tracks and faced him. My mother died at the age of 27. She gave birth to 3 sons. But only I survived. The other 2 did not live to see another day. My eldest brother, at the age of 3, was punished by our grandmother for disobeying her and was made to kneel in the ancestral hall. He caught a cold and died after 2 days of high fever. My younger sister. I paused, swallowing a lump in my throat, and continued. My younger sister was stillborn. Shuangwen was startled. Why? He likely assumed that as the daughter of the Wang clan, my mother must have been pampered and well cared for during her pregnancy. Your Majesty, I said, if a woman lives in suffocation, unable to move freely by day or sleep at night, how can one expect her to give birth to a healthy child? Shuangwen fell silent for a moment before asking, what happened next? I turned and continued walking forward, saying, after giving birth, she grew weak and emaciated, and died one night. At the time, I was still asleep and unaware of her passing. The next day, when I went to pay my respects, I was told she had already passed away. She died in disgrace. And her funeral was simple. The Wang family did not set up a memorial hall. Tonight's moon was exceptionally bright. And I walked slowly, stepping on the moonlight. It was strikingly similar to that night many years ago. I stepped on the moonlight, dug open her grave, and moved her remains to be buried with my younger sister. Stillborn babies are considered unlucky, so my younger sister was buried alone on an unnamed hill. My mother was lonely, and I hoped she could accompany her. But there was no need to tell Shuangwen any of this. Your Majesty, this is the reason. Even a noble lady from a distinguished family has a past she cannot bear to reveal, even to her husband. Shuangwen eventually established the position of female officials and revised the laws regarding divorce and remarriage. Though it was not entirely according to my wishes, I was satisfied. I understand how difficult this must be for him. He is challenging not only the aristocratic families but also the new nobility. And even those he personally promoted, the emperor's disciples, are all urging him to give up. This plan is detrimental to the state and will undermine public morale. The memorial stated. Shuangwen set it aside without action. My father heard the news and entered the palace to ask me if I knew why the emperor had such thoughts. I replied, "What does such a mindset have to do with you, father?" My father was speechless. He stared at me intently, as if seeing me for the first time. "Afu," he said, "do not forget your status. Do not be reckless." I couldn't help but smile. These were the words he had often said to my mother in the past. And now he was saying them to me. I laughed. "Father, rest assured. I always remember my place. It is you who seems to have forgotten who I am." My father was taken aback. "Someone," I ordered, "escort Wang Shu out of the palace. He is not to enter without summons." "Afu, you." My father's hair stood on end with anger. "How dare you?" I gave him a cold smile and didn't say another word. Turning to leave. The Empress's phoenix robe was always so splendid. Yet my father couldn't even tell what I was wearing. My father left the palace in disarray, returning home in a rage. When my elder brother came back and told me, the other elders in the family all advised him to be respectful toward the Empress. Even the clan leader said he shouldn't have been disrespectful to the Empress. I played with the flowers in the courtyard and said with a smile, "The clan leader always has a keen sense of smell." My father couldn't see it, but the clan leader probably knew exactly what was going on. The Wang family was no longer what it once was. History is vast and endless. And how many noble families have risen and fallen? Why can't the Wang family be one more? What reaches its peak must decline, what reaches its extreme must reverse. This is an immutable truth of the world. 2 months after the female official was appointed, Shuangwen conferred the title of Cloud Concubine on Yunyang, and she moved into Xiangyang Palace. Xiangyang Palace was once the residence of Bao Xiyun. When I heard this news, I wanted to laugh. But then I sighed. Xiangyang holds a dream of the divine maiden. Shuangwen has his own stubbornness. Another year passed, and the crown prince grew older. Some court officials suggested that the crown prince should move to the eastern palace. I objected. Shuangwen asked me why, and I said the crown prince was still young. If he were to live alone in another place, anything could happen. Shuangwen did not respond, though he also believed the crown prince should begin his training early. However, he did not go against my wishes. Xiao Rui has always been with me. Since his birth, I have raised him. Bao Xiyun did not contest this child with me. She has always been gentle and submissive, never vying for anything, content to stay by Xiaowen's side. It was as if we had an unspoken agreement. I took the child, and she took the husband. An odd harmony. Not long after, Bao Xiyun became pregnant again. Shuangwen had always been indifferent to women, but since Yunfei entered the palace, he seemed to have broken his vows, spending every night in Xiangyang Palace. He also bestowed upon Yunfei countless jewels, ornaments, and silk robes. Everyone in the palace knew that the emperor favored Yunfei more than the empress. But what does that matter? No one can shake my position. Even the Wang family has never taken a cloud concubine seriously. What they care about is the emperor's well-being, the reforms he implements time and again, and the growing number of commoners rising in the court. But they are powerless. Back then, because of me, Wang Zhi entered the court, and the Wang family supported him wholeheartedly. Now, Wang Zhi holds the rank of one of the 3 ministers. Yet his attitude is ambiguous, and his stance wavering, leaving the Wang clan frequently at a disadvantage. Now, he is beyond their reach. This once ruined land has finally begun to take shape. Shuangwen takes comfort in this every day. This was the grand vision he set for himself during his youth. When he was wandering aimlessly, he sacrificed his personal feelings, endured hardships, and finally can say he has not let the world down. But the world is never perfect. Shuangwen's illness grew worse, and the crown prince was still young. He continued to handle state affairs despite his illness, until one day he could no longer even drink soup. Bao Xiyun, out of concern, began to eat vegetarian food and pray to the Buddha, and asked me to light lanterns for the emperor on the Lantern Festival to pray for his recovery. I agreed. The Lantern Festival was a lively occasion, with many palace maids gathering by the river. Shuangwen was always simple and frugal, disliking luxury and grand celebrations, so the palace had not had any proper entertainment for years. This was a rare occasion. Bao Xiyun wrote her wishes carefully, placed them in the river, then knelt on the ground, facing the sky, murmuring to herself with a devout expression. She must have loved Shuangwen deeply. I heard that she secretly asked the imperial physician whether the heart blood from ancient formulas truly had miraculous effects. The imperial physician was startled and reported the matter to Shuangwen, who flew into a rage and put an end to her plans. Bao Xiyun was deeply saddened by this. She was already 5 months pregnant, yet her belly showed no signs of growth, and her cheeks remained gaunt. I looked at her for a long time and suddenly asked, "Do you hate him?" Bao Xiyun opened her eyes and stared at me blankly. "I mean, Your Majesty, don't you hate him?" Bao Xiyun realized what I meant, quickly lowered her brows, and shook her head. "You don't hate him?" I did. Bao Xiyun looked up at me, a faint smile on her lips. "But I also love him. Love is greater than hate." "Why?" I didn't understand. "Don't you think he's a heartless and ungrateful man? After all, for the sake of the empire, for power and status, he ultimately abandoned you. If it weren't for me, she would have died. No matter how much Shuangwen cherishes her now, in his heart, the empire will always come first." "Your Majesty is mistaken," she said. "It's not that the empire is more important than me, but that the people are more important than me. I actually think the same way. Your Majesty comes from a distinguished family and has never suffered hunger. You don't know the hardships of the common people." Bao Xiyun spoke with a sorrowful tone. "Corpses float on the river. Starving people lie everywhere, and there's no one to help them. If there's someone who can save this hell on earth, what's the harm in giving my life? I'm willing to do it." I had no words to respond and turned my gaze away from the river. The river was filled with lanterns, covering the entire palace river. She and Shuangwen were the same kind of person. How could I have been so shallow as to think she was just a parasitic flower? The person Shuangwen loved couldn't possibly be just beautiful. I was wrong. They were indeed a couple, united in purpose and unwavering in their commitment. After the Lantern Festival, Shuangwen's health gradually improved. Bao Xiyun gave birth to a daughter in the summer, and Shuangwen was overjoyed. He named her Chang'e, meaning eternal joy, hoping she would live a life filled with happiness. With a princess in the palace, the atmosphere became much more relaxed. Shuangwen, who had always been serious and reserved, now often teased the princess. At the princess's full moon banquet, I brought the crown prince along. Bao Xiyun looked radiant, likely because Shuangwen was recovering and the princess was healthy. Her brows were filled with contentment. Upon seeing me, she approached and bowed in greeting. I nodded and gestured for the crown prince to greet her as well. The crown prince, acting like a little adult, bowed his hands. Your Majesty. How are you? Bao Xiyun smiled gently. The crown prince is well. She paused for a moment before unable to resist touching the crown prince's head. I turned my head away, pretending not to notice. Midway through the banquet, I sat with Shuangwen. In truth, I hadn't seen him in a very long time. He propped his arm on the bed, leaning back, smiling as he watched the crown prince and the princess. It was the smile of a father. Perhaps I had been staring for too long, as he noticed and turned to look at me. What's wrong with the Empress? He asked. I averted my gaze and said, Your Majesty, please take care of your health. Shuangwen said nothing, but smiled again. He truly did smile a lot these days. After the banquet, I left first, but Shuangwen also stood up. I will accompany the Empress. I glanced at him and nodded. As we walked out of the palace gates, we walked side by side, with palace attendants following a few steps behind. He kept his hands behind his back and sighed. It's been so long since I last chatted with the Empress. There's plenty of time in the future. If your Majesty wishes to chat with the servant, simply have an attendant inform me. Shuangwen smiled. I'm afraid the Empress won't agree. He didn't wait for my response and continued. I'm also afraid that time is running out. I heard this and remained silent for a long time. He had an incurable disease, which had been alleviated but was difficult to cure completely. Moreover, he had always been diligent, working day and night, so it was difficult for him to live a long life. Your Majesty, there is no end to the affairs of state. Shuangwen agreed. Yes, but I always think that I want to do a little more before I die. Empress, only then will I die without regret. What about Lady Yun? What about the crown prince and the princess? I couldn't help but grow angry. Your Majesty, don't you care about them at all? Shuangwen smiled faintly. As long as the empire remains secure, they will have nothing to worry about. I sneered. That's not certain. He seemed to trust me, fearing that I would kill Lady Yun and her daughter after his death. Shuangwen looked at me for a moment, seeming to understand my meaning, but he didn't get angry. A faint smile lingered in the corners of his eyes. Has the Empress forgotten? Lady Yun is the Empress's person. This was what I had said to Bao Xiyun as a joke back then. She had saved my life, so I promised her my body, and from then on, she was to be my person. I never thought that Shuangwen would use these words to shut me up. How boring. I pursed my lips. Shuangwen laughed heartily. When the laughter subsided, he called out, Empress, Your Majesty, please speak. Xiyun has a kind heart and no ambition for power. However, she is still the mother of the crown prince. In the future, if anyone uses this to stir trouble, I hope the Empress will not take it out on her. He was still worried about Bao Xiyun, but I wasn't angry. I asked, Does the Emperor have any further instructions? Although the aristocratic families have declined, they may rise again in the future, and the reforms still have hidden dangers. Empress, when the crown prince ascends the throne, you must urge him to govern diligently and love the people, and not neglect the foundation of the empire. An emperor's wishes are twofold. The first is for the public good and the people, the second is for personal reasons and emotions. I said, Your Majesty, rest assured. That year was one of peace and prosperity. Shuangwen, however, had reached the end of his life. He suddenly fainted during court and was carried into the palace. The imperial physicians did their utmost to save him, and he regained consciousness in the night, his breath weak. Empress. He opened his mouth to call me, and I leaned in close. What does your majesty wish to say? Summon the chancellor, the generalissimo, and the minister of works. I glanced at him, and my eyes suddenly welled up. He was truly at the end of his life. The emperor's life was at stake, and the high officials were all waiting outside. Upon receiving Shuangwen's orders, they entered the hall one by one. Shuangwen leaned on Bao Siyun and signaled to the eunuch to fetch the silk box. Soon, the box was brought in, and Shuangwen signaled for me to open it. It was an edict of succession. The country had a crown prince, who should become the new ruler. I read the edict aloud. My elder brother was the first to shout, "We obey the emperor's command," followed by the other ministers in turn. There was no suspense. I said, "The emperor is tired. Everyone, please wait outside the hall." After everyone had left, I turned to look behind me. Bao Siyun was tearful, her face pressed against Shuangwen's cheek, murmuring to herself. At that moment, no one could take her place. For them as a couple, perhaps they didn't need anyone else at that moment. I stepped out the door, where my elder brother was waiting for me. I said, "Brother, you've gone through so much. Please stay and guard the palace for me tonight." My elder brother replied, "Your Highness, please rest assured." I nodded. The sky was still dark, there was no time for sorrow. I had to watch over the crown prince, control the imperial guards, prevent anyone from causing trouble in the palace, and reinforce the borders. There were so many tasks to handle, and with the change of dynasty, every matter was life or death. Tears were the most useless thing. I stayed outside Shuangwen's palace all night until I heard Bao Siyun's heart-wrenching cries from within the hall. Immediately, the ministers, eunuchs, and palace maids waiting outside knelt down with their foreheads pressed against the ground. I raised my face and looked into the distance. The civil and military officials were passing through the palace gates in order, waiting to attend court. For them, nothing would change today. Even if the person on the dragon throne were replaced, it would be the same. But for whom would it be different? Me? Or Bao Siyun? I didn't want to think about it. Ji Xiong came from the corridor, bowed his hands, and said, "Your Highness, everything is under control." I nodded and turned to leave, but suddenly my legs gave way. Ji Xiong caught me. "Your Highness, be careful. It's nothing. I just stood too long." I withdrew my hand and said, "The funeral arrangements for His Majesty should be handled according to protocol after you and the other ministers have discussed it." "Yes." I entered the hall. Shuangwen had already been dressed in funeral attire, his face covered with yellow paper, his hands folded together. He looked peaceful. Bao Siyun wept uncontrollably, hugging her knees and sitting at his bedside. The palace attendants saw me enter and wanted to remind her to stand up, but I raised my hand to stop them. She had every right to stay by Shuangwen's side. I did not envy her. Some women are destined to have deep emotional bonds, like Bao Siyun, while others, like me, are destined to be without love. But I have never regretted it, because I know that the story of mutual understanding and lifelong commitment never included me. When I came here, the story was already nearing its end. That girl named Wang Fu, touching the cold hands of the dead infant, vowed only revenge. The end of the story is my fate. From Empress to Empress Dowager, there is nothing new. Oh, later, as Shuangwen had guessed, someone used the identity of the mother of the emperor, who was praised like clouds, to stir up trouble. My elder brother told me that this was the work of a prominent family, aiming to drive a wedge between the Empress Dowager and the emperor. I laughed dismissively. They truly hate me, but I am also from a prominent family, and we should be on the same side. Why can't they tolerate me now? The Empress Dowager is too powerful. My elder brother said. They fear you. Is that so? I smiled indifferently. They should fear me. I have the merit of raising the emperor, the ability to assist in governing the state, and more. I gazed at the newly blooming peonies in the courtyard and couldn't help but wonder if there would ever be an opportunity to use that blank edict. I hope not. The end.